It's time for the Wrestling Observer Extra.
One more time for old time's sake.
With Dave Meltzer, right here on The Law. Live audio wrestling.
And let's go. We're now smoking with the best.
The extreme edition of Tight About Trivia is going to come up in the next segment. There's going to be so many rules, Mouth.
Oh.
So many rules.
Don't let it get out of hand or I'm going to hit you with a kendo stick.
Hey, if you want to call in, it's 1-855-591-6876. I'll need two contestants in the next segment. But this segment, we chat with the man from San Jose, California. He's the editor of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Dave Meltzer, we had a very non-extreme Extreme Rules tonight. The only thing extreme about it was the amount of rules, we have been saying. What did you think of tonight's show?
I think I liked it more than most of the feedback, but I thought that the show was so-so until the main event, and the main event was very good. Before that, some stuff was good, nothing was great. It had a bad vibe to it. I don't know if it was just the heels winning or just how awful the women's match was. I'm not really sure, but it just I had like when I look at the matches themselves, I don't think anything was too bad about the women's match, but I didn't have a feeling that this was a good show. And then the main event, was really, really good.
Really strong. And were you surprised to see Joe come out on top?
Well, I mean, when you see the odds swing, you're not really that surprised at the end. But I was figuring going in, like a couple days ago, that would probably be Rollins. Mm-hmm. So I guess in that sense, I would have been surprised. But I've always wanted the Lesnar-Joe match. I wanted that Lesnar-Joe match for a WrestleMania.
Yeah.
I mean, for the last, I guess it's been like a year plus. But the problem is with being on that July show is I feel that he's kind of just someone who's there. I'd rather he was the guy who was the ultimate goal and Strowman was the guy who was the setup. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But he's the setup for Strowman. So, I mean, they may have a hell of a match, and I'm more excited about him against Brock than I would be about anyone else, but I'm not as excited because of the show that it's on. They may have a great match, but I just think Joe and Brock Lesnar is like this dream match that should be on a WrestleMania show and should be like a series of 3 matches as opposed to, okay, he's the guy who's going to put Brock over so Brock can get to Braun Strowman. So that's the deal. But it's a unique match. So I'm happy in a sense that he won, and then in another sense I'm not happy that he won.
I think the best thing about it, Dave, is like you said, it's something fresh finally. We really need some fresh matchups.
Yeah, it is different. So, I mean, that's a positive. I just wish that, again, it's on Great Balls of Fire. The show itself already gives you a bad connotation.
Yep. And
it's one and done, and I didn't want Samoa Joe against Brock Lesnar as a one and done feud.
Right.
I think the only thing we're looking at here is trying to spin it positive. Number one, we get to see the match. Number two, the potential elevation of Joe if this thing really does it really performs and it's a really great match. And you see,
well, that's true. If he goes out there and kills it and has a great match with Brock Lesnar, they can double back to it sometime later.
You spoke of the trilogy, and I could hopefully see that happening.
I hope so.
Yep.
I hope the match is so good that they're forced to it for a trilogy. But the trilogy's not coming anytime soon because I'm sure that they've got their Brock Lesnar matches. Because Balor's going to get a shot, Rollins is getting a shot, and Strowman's getting a shot. And with the frequency that Lesnar works, that may take us all the way to WrestleMania.
Yeah, right.
True.
And that's Roman Reigns. So,
so it's,
there's always
I don't know that they can do a rematch for a long, long time.
Oh, I forgot about Reigns. Damn.
Yeah, that is unfortunate that it is probably going to be one and done with Joe because you would like to see an extended program.
Yeah.
Okay, so the match that you mentioned that really put a damper on this tonight was the women's match. And I was very surprised at this. Not necessarily the outcome of Alexa keeping the title, but the fact that the whole build to this was Bayley grabbing that kendo stick and finally going nuts. And we saw none of that. What has happened with Bayley?
I have no explanation because I thought that match was like it wasn't awful in execution. It was awful in setup in how it was laid out.
Yeah.
I mean, you're sitting there and it's like when the kendo stick first came into play, it's like Alexa gets it. I mean, she's got to hit her a couple times. Bayley gets it, come back, then you do whatever you do. And it was like she never got the comeback. It was a 5-minute match with the stipulation like that. It was a terrible finish, and it was just I thought, honestly, it was like one of the, I want to say like worst executed matches of the year, but when it was over, I was thinking like, God, this is the worst match of the year candidate.
Well, it just seems so weird that they would do all that build-up, Bayley's not extreme enough, she'll never be able to do it, because the payoff to that would be Bayley grabs it and beats the crap out of her, and they just totally kept away from that.
Yeah, I think that their idea, I think that they're telling I think it's obvious they're telling some sort of a story where Bayley, gets pushed and finally goes crazy, and it's a long-term thing, but I can really see this one. Between this one and the thing on Raw, I just see this stuff as really hurting her bad.
Brutal, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And next, as far as Alexa goes, there was a big push by the commentators tonight for this Nia Jax program, and that's not doing Alexa any favors.
Yeah, but you could tell when they did the face-off a couple weeks ago on Raw that that was the direction they're going. So that may be where the SummerSlam match goes. Oh. So you essentially have Nia Jax challenging for the women's title and Braun Strowman challenging for the men's title. So it's kind of the same, the two that came up together and were pushed in the exact same way, finally getting their big championship matches. Although, Nia Jax she's had NXT Women's Championship, but like they're getting their championship matches on the same show. It looks like. Or
interesting.
Maybe. Yeah.
So I want to move over to coming out of that just quickly, Dave. I want to talk a little bit about the Super Juniors tournament, and we got Kushida and Ospreay, pretty killer match in the final to set up Kushida and Takahashi at the Dominion show. What did you think overall of the Juniors tournament this year?
I think it was the best Juniors tournament that I can remember. I mean, maybe, if we go back 20 years when you had the Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Fitz Finlay, Otani, Jushin Liger in his prime era. That's, probably that was similar. I don't really remember it because, the difference is now is that we see every single match in New Japan World. Then we would just get like edited
highlights,
television matches. Yeah. Like from like 3 or 4 big shows during the thing, so we wouldn't see the whole tournament. So to me, it's like from what I've seen, it's the best one I've ever seen, and super final, but oodles of great matches. I mean, this was. The junior division in New Japan is like at an all-time peak right now.
It is,
and and there's even guys that weren't even in this that you would want to see, like the Young Bucks, Trent Beretta, people like that weren't even in the tournament. That's how much
talent they have.
Rocky Romero, how much talent they have in that division. Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly, although they're, but Bobby Fish still could have gone. So it's like they didn't even bring everyone, and they still had
still
the
was
best
killer,
ever.
Yeah. One question I had though, Dave, was the treatment of Liger in the tournament. To me, that was only the only sour spot in it, because they really were kind of pushing this as his final one, and they didn't let him win until like his very last match. I just thought it was really strange way to handle it, the way they built it up with him going in.
I thought that I completely agree with you. I was so disappointed in that because the other thing is that in every single city he was the most over guy, and because of that, it's like you wouldn't have in the incredible out of this world match if Liger was in all the main events and if Liger wrestled Kushida in the finals, let's say. But sometimes you sacrifice 4.5-star matches or whatever 5-star matches for a storyline that you can only do once in a lifetime. Jushin Liger's last tournament is only going to be able to be once, and Jushin Liger, legitimately, this guy's a legend of the junior heavyweight division. I mean, you could argue strongly that Jushin Liger is the greatest junior heavyweight. To me, it's like Jushin Liger or Danny Hodge, the greatest junior heavyweight in history of pro wrestling.
Yeah.
So if you go with that. Especially when you consider longevity. I mean, because Sayama and some of the other ones didn't have the longevity. So the point is like he hasn't won a tournament in 16 years. So him going for that tournament win this year, I think would have made an amazing story.
Even if he did,
bigger mainstream, and I would have at least, if it was me, I'm not sure that I would have him against Takahashi at Dominion. Actually, if it was me, I would have him against Takahashi at Dominion, but I wouldn't have minded. I wouldn't have minded if he had gone to the finals and then Kushida beat him in the finals.
Yeah, my thing is, I think he should have been strong up until the finals, and then he either gets he makes it to the final and loses, or gets knocked out right close to the final. So he still has a pretty spectacular showing.
Yeah. So, in fact, I think that him. Him knocking off Taichi was like a nice farewell, and it got over, but. him going into the finals, I mean, there would have been so much more interest in the finals with him in it than Will. Even though, I mean, I can't complain about the match and all that. The match was that Will Ospreay had, and not just that one. Will Ospreay had, I think Will Ospreay was the star of the tournament.
He was.
And just so many, the Takahashi match and the Ricochet match and Dragon Lee match. I mean, he was, but everyone was. I mean, there wasn't. There was everyone in that tournament worked really hard. I mean, even like Taichi had a great match at the end with Liger, even though he didn't have such great matches during the tournament.
Dave, last night we had UFC 212. On top of that, the main event was for the featherweight title. The interim champion Max Holloway going against Jose Aldo, who's your champion. Max Holloway walking out the winner here looked great, and in this match, to me, I mean, we had always thought the punch to Aldo by Conor McGregor was a bit of a fluke. But when I saw Holloway catch him a couple times and dizzy him each time he tried, he caught him, to me, it looks like a lot of wear and tear on Aldo here. And I'm questioning if he's the fighter that he once was.
I don't think he is. Even when he was winning the rounds, I didn't think he was the fighter he once was. The other question I have, and I don't know the answer to it, I don't know if he's addressed it, is how come he never threw any leg kicks? Because when Aldo was at his killer self, and he was like the greatest featherweight ever, those low kicks were his big weapon, and he never threw one. He went in there with a boxing match and allowed Holloway off the hook, and then he did get tired, and Holloway's a good puncher and everything like that, but I do think that some of it is Aldo, he wasn't this wasn't the same Aldo that fought Chad Mendez and Frankie Edgar and so many of the guys up and down for all, for so many years. I think that he's whatever it was, it's like with Barao. It's weird. Like Barao was such a killer, and then when he finally lost, he was like nothing ever since.
Yeah.
And Aldo, he lost to Conor. He did have a great fight with Frankie. He really looked good in that one. But in this one, he did not. I mean, he wasn't the same guy who fought Frankie Edgar.
Yeah, very true. Also, Dave, we heard Kazushi Sakuraba going to be added to the UFC Hall of Fame. Obviously, a legendary figure when it comes to the history of MMA. But
and Japanese pro wrestling too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just wondering, for the average UFC fan, do they really know that much about Sakuraba? Because I mean, it's pride and the stuff with the Gracies that you think of with Sakuraba.
No, they don't, but that's why I'm really glad he's in the Hall of Fame, because a guy like Chuck Liddell or Anderson Silva, it's like the current fan base would know them. Mm-hmm. But this is something where, one of the things with the Hall of Fame that you want is the old legends, and people learn about them. And Sakuraba, for good and bad, there's a lot to learn about Sakuraba's career. I just wrote a story for the, I did an MMA fighting story, and I got another story in The Observer, and I'm going back through all my Sakuraba notes and records, and he had, during that run before, he got,
just too beat up.
He just got too beat up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for fighting so many big guys.
Yeah.
But his run from, I would say, 1998 to 1992, 93, or 1998 to 2002, 2003. It's kind of unbelievable what he did. Even in the fights he lost, he lost to guys who were 20, 30, 40 pounds bigger than him. And he put up good fights with all of them before losing. I mean, he was an amazing fighter, and maybe the best submission MMA fighter of his time, or right up there with him. I mean, he submitted, Renzo Gracie, and he, in the fight with.
I always think of that 90-minute spectacular, right?
Right. Well, I mean, that's never going to happen again.
Yeah.
What he did on that night, where he went 90 minutes with Sakuraba and then fought Igor Vovchanchin, who had him by 50 pounds, and went 15 minutes with him before they threw in the towel. I mean, that's the most unbelievable night of anyone ever. Nobody's ever done that.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, we got to say goodbye this week, but what's coming up in The Observer?
Well, we'll do the fallout for this pay-per-view, and preview Dominion and the Super Juniors when all those lineups come out. I got a big story on Sakuraba, probably a big story on Joe Silva finally as well. So actually, I think this is going to be pretty big writing-wise. I think this will be probably one of the better issues in a long time.
Nice.
There you go. Ideal time to go to WrestlingObserver.com and get your subscription now. And Dave, we'll talk to you next week right here.
Okay, have a great week.
You too, Dave Meltzer, WrestlingObserver.com. As I said, go get your subscription.